So I'm going to give an overview of the next capability stream, and that's in Genomic Workforce. So basically, looking in Genomic Workforce, our overview of this was to design something to overcome the barrier to integrating genomics more into healthcare delivery. So our aim was to build genomics knowledge and skills in current and future scientists and also clinicians. And the way that we decided to do this, and with the support of Queensland Genomics, was to develop the first master's program in Diagnostic Genomics for Australasia. So just a little bit of background, and I'm sorry I didn't change QGHA. I should have changed that to Queensland Genomics, so next time I will. But basically, it's one of the 5 streams, capability building work streams for Queensland Genomics, and workforce development is, of course, important. If our workforce isn't ready to do this, how are we going to roll it out across the system? So just a little bit of background. The current professional accreditation for all laboratory scientists is something called MHGSA, and that's a member of the Human Genetic Society of Australasia. So Human Genetic Society of Australasia is the accrediting body for all of Australia and also for New Zealand. However, up until recently, the way that this was done was that people would be virtually in an apprenticeship sort of situation where they would work in laboratories, they would sit a set of exams, and if they had enough cases and saw enough different ones, they would put their information forward as case reports and logbooks, and it was then assessed by the Board of Censors for the Human Genetic Society of Australasia. There were 3 different areas: cytogenetics, molecular genetics, and biochemical genetics. But the world has changed, and a lot of the technology to look at those 3 areas was starting to merge. And what we were finding was that people were not having the academic rigour and the content and the background to necessarily keep up with that technology. So the Board of Censors for HGSA, for which I was the chair, decided to have a look at what was happening across the world and benchmark with what was happening there, and also come up with a process that we thought might be better. So basically that background showed that it would be better to take it through to a postgraduate course, which is what was happening elsewhere, and there are about 10 of those rolled out across the UK. There's currently one in Canada, there's a couple now started in the US, and there are a couple have now gone through in Germany. So to benchmark with the world standards, it was necessary that we lift the background, the academic rigour of diagnostic genomics people across Australia. So this was an opportunity through Queensland Genomics for Queensland to be involved in this process, and for our clinicians and our diagnostic genomics people to actually be upskilled in this area if we could roll out something. So our aim was to bring that out, not just across Queensland though, but bring it out across Australia. So that's a little bit of background. So the overall aims were to establish an internationally reputable master's program in diagnostic genomics across Australasia. Our aim was to have enough students in it to make it feasible and sustainable. So our aim was 20 students in the first year of the program. What we were ultimately trying to do was to train diagnostic laboratory staff who are competent in not just sequencing technology, but also curation, interpretation, and reporting of variants. We also wanted to train emerging leaders in translational diagnostic genomics, to nurture research to drive innovation in genomic testing and analysis, and to make sure that any postgraduates from this course had enough exposure to clinical bioinformatics so that that was also a career option for those graduates. So in terms of how we approached that, the first thing was to work with the HGSA because they are the accrediting board for this. And so a curriculum was developed with the Board of Censors of the Human Genetic Society of Australasia, as I've mentioned, by benchmarking across best practice what was happening in the world. That curriculum was then translated into a very large pile of paperwork. So basically, Aideen, who's sitting there smiling, but really she played a very key role in generating this huge pile of paperwork, which is absolutely needed to develop a master's program and to get it through a university system. And so what we did was develop up an 18-month master's, but we nested a graduate diploma, which is a 12-month course, and also a graduate certificate, which is a 6-month course, into this. And then the huge pile of paperwork was put together to meet all the appropriate criteria to go through QUT's Health Academic Board, the Curriculum Standards Committee, and the Programs Executive Committee. And that all happened, and we could actually then roll it out. And so we were able to roll that out by not just the paperwork, but taking on the appropriate people to play key roles in rolling out this master's. And so we've taken on a course coordinator, Michael Gabbett, who's played an absolutely key role in getting this up and going and happening well. We've also taken on a number of unit coordinators for individual subjects within this. And because a lot of it has to go across all of Australia, it's important that we have online material that's accessible, contemporary, and covers everything as well. So we needed to have a learning designer to make sure that it was all appropriately put together. So going through all those stages, we then were able to take our inaugural intake of students, and they commenced in February 2018. So a lot of work behind this, but Queensland Genomics has been a driving force in enabling us to get this up and going and to roll this out. So the course structure, as I mentioned, was designed in collaboration with HGSA. So it involves a number of basic subjects such as human genetics, disease pathogenics, diagnostic genetics, and also genetic technologies. We also then go on to some subjects such as genomic analysis. There's an ethical, legal and social side, quality control and lab management side. And because we're now covering different areas, students can specialise in terms of their streams in focusing more on the molecular side or perhaps more on the biochemical side or more on the cytogenomic side. That's the 18-month coursework. In order to be an accredited person, they must pass all of the coursework, but they also need to have placements. So to see enough cases and to be able to put together logbooks for these and to present those. So in the final component in year 2, students can actually do 2 aspects here. They can do a clinical placement where they actually see all different sorts of cases and still get assessed by the Board of Censors for accreditation, or if they wish, they can take more of a research component side. So they then will undertake some research, they'll write up a thesis, and perhaps can go on to further studies into the future. So the outcomes from this is that we're now have got that up and going. We're entering the 2nd year of delivery of the Masters. Since inception, we've taken 75 students into the Masters, 4 into the grad dip, 5 into grad certificates, and we've actually had 1 graduate certificate already given out, so graduate. And we also have now, being in that 2nd year, have a number that are going through into the placement component as well. So 3 of those have just started in Queensland placements. So on average, we probably take about 40 new students a year, so the numbers are pretty terrific. They're not just from Queensland, they're from all around Australia, but there's quite a significant number that are coming from Queensland as well. And as I've mentioned, they can be at different levels. So we are tending to find that a very significant number of them are people that are already working in the field. So they're working in diagnostic labs and they're looking at getting their accreditation and upskilling. But some of them are people that are working in the general workforce, and we're finding a number of clinicians are starting to come through, particularly for the graduate certificate, graduate diploma level courses. If you just look at where people are coming from in the first year of intake, 22 from Queensland, 2 New South Wales, 2 Victoria, etc., 5 South Australia, 1 from the Seychelles, unexpectedly. And Michael keeps offering to go there and just check out why we've got 1, and maybe there's some more. Looking at the 2nd year, though, in 2019, you see again there's a very significant number coming through from Queensland, 23 from Queensland, but New South Wales is starting to come through pretty seriously now, so there's 15 there. A little bit from Victoria and South Australia, but this year we're looking at more international students. So we've opened that up more, and we have now 1 from China, 1 from Malaysia, and 1 from Myanmar. That's with very little advertising done internationally as well. So you can see that the course is not just established. We have people doing things. It's now starting to spread out, so it's got an international flavour to it, and I think it's starting to get a little more national as well. At the moment, as I've mentioned, it's the only accredited course for HGSA at the moment, so it is the pathway through for accreditation for diagnostic genomics people working in this area. There's also been a bit of community engagement and promotion to make sure that everybody knows about this course. Obviously, the HGSA is the key area for stakeholders and for people who are coming through. So we've had a big attendance and representation at the annual scientific meeting for that. But we've also, Michael was a guest speaker at the Royal Australian College of GPs in 2018 as well. And as I've mentioned, there's been some interest with clinicians in this area. We have some Facebook information out there, and we'll also have attendance and representation at the Australian Society of Diagnostic Genomics, which is a subset of HGSA this year as well. So our learnings from this, basically, what we've learnt is that we needed to look at what was needed for diagnostic genomics people across Australia, and those junior people, what do they need, not just for career advancement, but for content career advancement as well, and accreditation. We've also started looking at the learning needs for clinicians. As I've mentioned, they're not particularly interested in doing a full master's, but there are quite a number who are doing individual smaller components, such as the grad dip or the grad cert. We've been able to contemporise, make the curriculum much more reasonable and up-to-date for diagnostic genomics people, and also we can continue to modify that into the future as well. And we've been able to review the workforce needs for diagnostic genomics across Queensland, but also across Australia and New Zealand. And you'll notice, if anybody remember that slide, we've started getting a number of New Zealand people coming into the course now as well. So the future, I think that the Masters is up and running. I think that Aideen played a key role in getting it going in the first place, but Michael is really the driver behind making sure that this is sustainable and going into the future, and he and his team are doing a terrific job there. And it's also really interesting to see the clinical involvement coming through into this. As part of this particular capability stream, we were also looking at trying to develop more clinical outreach education for clinicians on a number of different types. We've done a little bit of that, but we'd like to see a lot more of that going into the future across Queensland.